Tim, the roadmap is lit.
Roadmap is lit. I called you last week with an idea and you were like, love it. And I was like, it happens very rarely when like I come to town with an idea when he's like, doesn't need a lot of persuasion. He was like, I'm in.
Coming up, Tim and I are going to unpack and debrief our experience at World Agri-Tech. The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in ag who think differently. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Myland, a soil health company that's revolutionizing agriculture. Through their innovative soil as a service, Myland partners with farmers to improve their soil health with the power of beneficial live native microalgae. The result? Healthier soils, more productive farms, and benefits like smarter water use. Discover how Myland can transform your farm at myland.ag.
Ty, how you feeling? You recovered from the busy week we had?
I'll just never learn my lesson. I did the up and back, fly out super early in the morning, fly back late at night, and I was hurting. On the way home. I'm like, when am I getting home? But it was obviously nice to sleep in my own bed. And next year, I definitely want to attend both days.
Totally. Yeah, it was an early morning on Tuesday. Glad I stayed over and caught the show Wednesday morning as well.
All right, Tim. Well, we haven't just caught up in a while, and it's about time we have. It's been busy the past few months launching AgList. We've got Polaris as my full-time day job. You've got the farm as your full-time day job. I feel like it's come up a few times now. It's like doing my bio is taking quite a long time these days.
Yeah, I think both of us working 4 jobs now. It's a lot. So when we were in Agri-Tech, it was like, what hat am I wearing? Like literally, physically, am I talking farm? Am I talking AgList, Polaris? There's a lot of different things going on.
Ironically, you were wearing a hat at Agri-Tech, the farmer mode hat.
Rock the farmer mode hat. I think it was like one of 2 people wearing a hat at Agri-Tech. I think Danny Bernstein was rocking a Reservoir Farms hat, so that was cool to see. Team hat.
It's pretty funny to compare and contrast World Ag Expo with World Agri-Tech. Very different events, and most notably, the percentage of hat wearers. At World Ag Expo, I think we're talking like 75% plus wearing hats. At World Agri-Tech, I think there was 2 people, you and Danny.
Yeah, just keeping consistent. We're the farmer mode hat to both.
All right, so Tim, before we get into some of our takeaways, I think it'd be good to talk about each of those hats we're wearing, just to give a quick rundown. So why don't we start with your hat that you're wearing currently, your Nuss Farms hat? How are things going on the farm right now?
Things are good. We've got a fair amount of rain in March, so we're kind of in a holding pattern where we've done a lot of field prep, getting things ready for planting. We'll start planting early April is usually our window, so we're a couple weeks out from getting crops in the ground. So just kind of trying to get as much done as we can in between these rainstorms, but overall got a really good plan in place for the season. Pretty similar crop mix, doing our normal mix like garlic and tomatoes, peppers, melons, herbs. So still very diversified, and I think a pretty good plan in place this year. Just praying for better weather. Last year we just got killed with that like excessive heat in July, which stunted a lot of our crops. So one of those things in farming, like that's totally out of our control, and trying to work on just strategies there to kind of mitigate on stuff that's out of our control, like weather.
Are we changing any of our strategies with anything related to the farm?
No, I mean, I think we've made more investment around irrigation and kind of optimizing there. So we're doing a couple projects, doing more permanent drip irrigation to kind of make the management in season a little bit easier. Like the more permanent systems we have, it just makes everything a lot easier, not having kind of mobile systems and kind of getting away from furrow flood irrigation. So now we're probably 80+% of what we do is all on permanent drip, which is quite a bit different than what the farm looked like 5+ years ago. So it's been kind of chipping away every year, trying to do some more investments there on irrigation infrastructure, which is not the sexiest thing. It's not drones and AI, but it's something that's very practical that has really strong ROI. On the biologicals front, we've obviously been focused there the past couple of years. One of the reasons why we started AgList, one of our other hats, but really doubling down on that this year to explore new products. So we've been talking with several new companies on potential trials we could do. Like, I'm really curious about products that mitigate heat stress. So having some conversations there of like if there's tools in the toolkit to make plants a little bit more resilient, just given situations we've faced the past couple of years. that's super interesting. So yeah, pretty good plan in place for the year, and just anxious to get forward. It's like I think it comes to a certain point where everybody just wants to get plants in the ground and start farming. So we're kind of in the in that limbo period right now.
Totally. One other thing that you're doing differently, Tim, is enrolling in an exciting new energy program with PG&E that is implemented by Polaris Energy Services.
Nice segue, Ty. Yeah, definitely with the farm economy and challenges, like we've been hyper focused on our expenses, on kind of what expenses do we have that we can negotiate pricing to get more advantageous pricing, what's kind of a need to have versus nice to have, just to kind of manage the current state of the market right now. And so energy is a big spend for a lot of farming operations, and looked into the new rate program from Polaris. And so we're going to be deploying this hourly flex pricing program on a number of our permanent irrigation sites this season.
You're welcome for that segue. So hat number 2, the Polaris Energy Services hat. So things are going super well. We just launched a month or two after I joined this new program called Hourly Flex Pricing. This is for all of our California listeners out there, but it's a risk-free pilot that allows growers to save on their electricity bills. It's a risk-free program, meaning growers can give it a try and never pay more than their baseline bill. So that we've seen a ton of interest in this program, Tim, because growers are just like you, right? They want to figure out, hey, where can we save a few dollars, or maybe in some cases several $1,000s, right, on their electricity bills. Plus, there's automation incentives available for growers that are interested in automating their irrigation to help to even further participate in this real-time pricing program. So it's been a ton of fun getting this off the ground, Tim. There's been a ton of interest. We're blowing through kind of the program goals because growers are so excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about the program is, I think historically, like, time of use has been kind of what growers are trying to get to avoid using energy from 5 to 8, 5 to 9, whatever it is during the season. And it's really hard to execute, where you could be perfect 29 days out of the month, and you could go into on peak for 15 minutes and get hit with a really hard demand charge. And so this kind of softens things for growers to start moving in the direction to get energy usage off peak, but not be as penalized as they have in kind of historical rate classes. And so that's kind of the bucket that we fell in, where we're like, we probably can't be perfect, but we can try to make an attempt. And that's kind of the perfect fit for our situation.
And it's exactly what the pilot is trying to figure out, right? It's trying to figure out, hey, are growers going to respond and actually change their behavior to save money? And we hope that's the case, but that's the benefit of being a pilot. The other side of the house, Tim, is demand response. And I think so many people don't know about this. I didn't know about demand response until learning about Polaris, but demand response is this tool that many hundreds of utilities have in their pocket to balance grid, to manage grid reliability, so that when there's periods of peak stress on the grid, demand response is able to shed load to avoid a blackout. And utilities will pay customers to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm willing to shed load when one of these events happens. They will pay those customers. And so what we Polaris do is help facilitate that for growers. So it's one thing to save some money on your electricity bill. That's awesome. That's great. But another thing is actually getting a check from Polaris by participating in these programs. So that's the other side of the house. And I think a huge area of opportunity in agriculture, because, Tim, so many growers don't even know about demand response, that there are growers, a lot of our customers, that are taking advantage and getting checks every quarter by participating in these programs.
Yeah, that's like we've chatted about it before when we joined Polaris, of just kind of the benefits and value prop for growers, of like it's really cool to go to a grower and say, like, we could either earn you revenue on assets you already own, or save you money through this new program with zero out of pocket to use. So it makes the sales process way less sticky.
Totally. So it's been fun ramping with the team, seeing everyone at World Ag Expo a month ago, and just continuing to push this thing forward and build it. And I think the last thing I'll mention on the Polaris front, Tim, which is relevant for World Agri-Tech, is just partnerships, right? We're pursuing partnerships across the ecosystem with other hardware providers, software companies, where we can help tie in and provide value add to what their business is. And I think that's a key strategy for us as well.
Ty, as we wrap the Polaris section, like, how's it been being CEO for 5 months. Like you came from like bigger companies historically. You've worked at Apple, Zoox, which was acquired by Amazon, Rivian, like these massive companies, and now you're leading a small team. How's that transition been?
It's been so rewarding, and I think it's just awesome to have impact, like, tangible impact that you can make on a daily basis. And I think that's not just me as the CEO, that's everyone on our team, right? When you're working on a small team, there's just something so exciting about, you're not a cog in a wheel, you're actually driving value every day. And so that's been really rewarding for me to go from the corporate world to a small growing business. Is you can just have and drive so much impact. The decisions we make have direct correlation to how the business is doing. And I think at the end of the day, a business is all about people, and the people we have on the team are fantastic and really great at what they do and experts in this industry. This is like a really niche area, right? Learning about demand response and utilities and energy and all this stuff. And it's just cool to work with people that are so knowledgeable and so excited about what we offer to growers and the value we bring to the space. So it's been a lot of fun, Tim. I think the team hasn't gotten sick of me yet, but that may happen at some point.
It's still early, Ty. It's still early.
It's still early. Exactly. Exactly. All right, Tim, let's wrap up here. We got to talk about our AgList hat. How are things going with AgList? What do people need to know?
Been going really good, Ty. Like we launched in late January, and I feel like the feedback has been awesome so far. When we launched, there was 10 or so companies on the platform. We're up to I think about 24. So it's been adding company or two per week signing up for the platform. Over 100 products now. So it's been awesome to see the response from the industry of like, this is a really good idea for people to be on an independent platform to really help growers, agronomists discover and find these products. So we've been heads down doing a lot of sales outreach, talking to companies, kind of getting them educated on the platform and the benefits there. But I mean, I think it could be going as well as it could be, Ty.
Totally. There was so many biological companies at the conference, so got to meet a lot of folks. Some that are already on the platform, like Indigo and Sound Ag and others, to companies that are excited to join the platform as well. So just continuing to build that. But Tim, man, we're not stopping, right? Like with this AgList thing, it's not like you build this version 1.0 and hope some companies sign up. Like we have big ambition with this, and we are cooking up some ideas and functionality that is going to further build what we've started.
Yeah, the roadmap is super exciting. We've added a lot of new features just this past month with kind of distributor and retailer functionality. We're adding in a new partnership model as well in the coming weeks, so that'll be exciting. But we've got more beyond that is in the pipeline that we're working with our software team on.
Tim, the roadmap is lit.
Roadmap is lit. I called you last week with an idea, and you were like, love it. And I was like, it happens very rarely when like I come to Ty with an idea when he's like, doesn't need a lot of persuasion. He was like, I'm in.
I feel like I'm very fair, Tim, to your ideas. You just rarely bring like such epic ideas.
Yeah, this one's pretty epic.
You're a high volume idea guy, but low hit rate.
Yeah, just vibing ideas, Ty.
All right. And the last thing, Tim was wearing the farmer mode hat, the podcast. We're just continuing to grind with the podcast, build what we started 7 years ago. It's so funny talking to people about, you guys have been doing this for 7 years. Like, what are you doing? But yes, we are out here still grinding 7 years later. And we've got, you could say that we're in farmer mode. Farmer mode is this idea. It's based off of the idea Paul Graham put out an essay of there's founder mode and manager mode. And founder mode is companies that are founder led, right? Where the founder is pushing and it's default growth. It's how you can be intense and drive growth really through founder led intensity. And farmer mode is kind of like a offshoot of that, of farmers are the original entrepreneurs, right? And they are hustling and they are adaptable and they have to be always hustling, always on it. And so that's what farmer mode is. You don't need to be clear. We had this question asked, I think a few people at the conference. You do not need to be a farmer to be in farmer mode. It is a mentality that Tim and I are, when we're grinding on all the stuff we're working on, we always we'll say to each other in ultimate farmer mode right now.
Totally. Excited to get the hats out there. We're going to be announcing them next month on where you can pre-order those, get the farmer mode hats in time for summer season. And another big milestone coming up, Ty, episode 400 is around the corner. So excited for that one.
Maybe there will be some coinciding news with episode 400, because you're not really podcasting right if you're not celebrating every 100th episode.
That's very true. Very true. More to come.
More to come. All right, Tim, let's dig in here on World Agri-Tech. Let's maybe do some rapid fire. What was one of your takeaways from the event?
So it was my third year attending the show. Main takeaway is this is just the place to be. It's the best networking, I feel like, in our industry. If you're in kind of ag tech, investment, building companies within the ag space, you can't walk 10 feet without bumping into somebody you recognize. The conversations and just kind of serendipity of being in one place as an industry is awesome. So that was my first takeaway, is it's so fun being there.
All right, I'm going to take a simpler one, Tim. I still think the Wi-Fi sponsor is where it's at. You made this call out last year. There's a lot of sponsors to this event. Okay, there's dozens and dozens. I think the Wi-Fi sponsor is where it's at. That's where the money is made, because everyone has to enter the Wi-Fi password with the name of the company. So you're basically you're guaranteed to hit almost every eyeball at the event if people are logging into the Wi-Fi. So definitely big takeaway, where the eyeballs are at, the attention is the Wi-Fi sponsor.
Shout out Verbiage Sky Financial. I'm not sure if you listened to the pod and got our hot tip last year, but nice call with that sponsorship.
Oh man, if they listened to the pod and did that, that'd be my biggest milestone as a podcaster.
Seriously.
Tim, to take it a different direction, I had my panel with Friedberg, and I think we can get into a few things we discussed there, but he took a zoom out of the industry. I kind of asked him, what's your perspective on the space? And he talked about how there's some negativity and maybe the returns haven't been there as expected for AgTech VC, but ultimately the technology is advancing and there's a lot to be excited about. And there are going to be these 1 in 100 companies that are going to actually have venture scale returns. And there's probably going to be fewer than we think. And I think that was a big takeaway for me, is we see all these startups in the startup hall and in the exhibition hall, all these companies. And I think that the reality of venture is that the venture capital is designed, predicated on this idea that most of the companies will fail. And that's a tough pill to swallow, right? Because it's if you are in a venture-backed business, if you're starting a venture-backed business, you have a low probability of success. And I think that a lot of times we have people on the podcast and what you're doing is awesome. That's so cool. But it's very likely that many of them won't make it. And we've seen that, Tim, right? I think if you do a survey of the first 200 episodes of this podcast, some percentage of those companies are no longer around, right? Because that's just the nature of venture capital. And so I think it was good reflection, both on a negative perspective and an optimistic perspective, right? The negative takeaway is, should all of these companies be venture backed? And I think the answer is no. And I think every founder should have a really honest look at themselves and look in the mirror of, is this company going to be $100 million company, right? And if not, doesn't mean it shouldn't be a company, right? But it maybe means that the venture capital path shouldn't be the path, right? So that's kind of the negative takeaway I have is, man, maybe some of these companies shouldn't be venture backed. The positive takeaway is that, man, that makes me feel more ambitious, right? Founders should feel more ambitious if they are going the venture capital route of, do we have a transformative business that can be a 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 business that can transform agriculture, right? Those are the companies that are going to be successful in venture capital. And you need, if you're going to, it's you got to choose one. You can't be middle of the road. If you're oh, we've got a big business that's exciting, we have a technical advantage, novel technology, whatever it is, you can't sit in the middle. You've got to be we are going to take over the freaking world, or maybe venture capital is in the right path and there's other mechanisms, and maybe you bootstrap, right? And you have a solid, amazing business, but it's not venture backed. So that's a big takeaway there for you, Tim, but I think it's really important.
Super good points, Ty. I mean, I think it is an exciting time to be an ag tech company because with the tools available now, it's a lot easier to build a company with all the tools available than 10 years ago. Like you did a post about when we did Forbes Ag Tech 7 years ago of all the companies there. Like if you were starting a company 7 years ago, like all those tools weren't available to you. So you can be a lot more capitally efficient and more nimble and lean building a company in ag tech now. And so like that is really exciting to me. And like I heard Ben Gordon actually made the comment of like seed strapping of companies that like raise a seed round, and basically like that gets them through for like 4 years of just like not having to like raise a new series every single year because you're burning through so much cash of like, let's raise a modest amount up front to get us started and then be hyper lean, run a small team and build scale.
Totally. Yeah. And that's a really good point, right? Like I think that middle ground exists for companies. Like VCs should, turn their ears off, right? But for founders, right, like you should be focused on profitability and a sustainable business model alongside growth, right? Because the companies that can just persist on revenue growth without bottom line growth are those 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 companies, right? But if you are not in that camp, you have to inherently be profitable and have a sustainable business model. So super good point. Tim, we were hanging out at a happy hour. We had a fun conversation with an industry veteran and advisor, and he was talking about something he's excited about right now.
Yeah, we were at the Ohalo happy hour and talked to a guy named Dan Burdett, who is an advisor for a company called Plant Path. And we were like telling him like, what's the coolest thing you're working on? You advise a lot of companies, like Ohalo is obviously cool. What else is interesting? And he's like, this one's like a little bit random, but advising this company that is basically developing new varieties of stevia. So like the artificial sweetener that replaces sugar. One of the knocks on stevia has been just like a weird aftertaste, and like majority of stevia production happens in China. So it's like for how much production is consumed in the US of kind of big food looking for alternates to sugar in their products, that supply chain is all imported out of China. So like a food security risk and just a logistics risk as well, having all that supply come from there. So with the rise of genetic breeding and AI tools, like they've been able to develop new strains, varieties of stevia that have characteristics that food brands are looking for, like not the bitter aftertaste. This one pairs well with this kind of a product. This one pairs well with this kind of a product. So they've been scaling for the past couple of years, doing production in North Carolina, started with a couple 100 acres and scaling up this year as well. So I thought that was super interesting of like onshoring a staple that is heavily used in the US. Like that's a really cool use of AI to bring varieties to make them more suitable for US production zones.
Such a great example of genetics, right? And the advancements in breeding is, I love that stevia example. And like how many examples of there are out there? There's like, I feel like there's countless examples and use cases for the advancements in breeding. So that was a great one. Tim, I mean, I think like zooming out, the big things were the usual suspects right now. It's robotics, right? It's on-farm robotics. It was genetics, which was kind of like my conversation with David. We focused on just the advancements in breeding and genetic technology and what that means, what Ohalo and others are doing. Third is AI, right? Just how AI is impacting everything, both like at a business level, like businesses that are building an AI platform or something like that, but also just how AI supercharges agriculture across the ecosystem. And then the fourth is biologicals, right? Biologicals were a huge topic of conversation. Corteva talked about how like they are just seeing the market expanding and really being exponential in crop protection and fertility. Biological products, just the market share of biologicals in those space just going up and up and to the right every single year. So seeing all the companies on there, obviously that makes me like, that's one of the reasons we're doing AgList, right? Is because there's so much momentum in this space, so many companies, a lot of these companies that are going direct to growers or via distribution, like how do growers make sense of all this? Like what are going to be the products that actually work?
Yeah, really good points, Ty. I mean, I think the last thing they'll hit on, something near and dear to both of our hearts, is just the coffee situations at conferences. Like, continues to be atrocious. We talked about it at World Ag Expo a few weeks ago. Only hot coffee. They didn't even have cold coffee. Agri-Tech, I feel like still a knock. There's not a cold brew option. You have to go up 2 levels to the lobby. It's like $8 for a Pete's, and it's like not the real cold brew. So you and I had to like just take 20 minutes off, walk to Blue Bottle, get a proper cold brew. So like huge opportunity, I think, to really improve morale at these shows is like get cold brew on tap.
Tim, I really appreciate you bringing up the elephant in the room. However, could I zag for a second?
Zag away.
Maybe this is a feature, not a bug. Okay, because we got to have a lovely walk in the early afternoon to grab a Blue Bottle cold brew, and it was honestly a nice relief from being, downstairs in the conference world, like, feeling like a casino in there. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, good spin, Ty. It's pretty funny. Like we've gone to this the past couple of years. Like, tell her mom we're going to this conference in San Francisco. She's very concerned about just like the safety of us being in San Francisco. And last year we like took a picture. We were like on the streets. It was like a sunny day. We're like, this is lovely. So we did a follow up picture this week of just like a lovely stroll through San Francisco.
I love San Francisco. It's back.
So pleasant.
So back. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you're a new listener and you found us at World Agri-Tech, great to have you. Be sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes of the podcast. Where can you find us? Be sure to check out AgList if you're into biologicals. If you're a California grower, utility, or water district, if you're randomly listening to this podcast, check out Polaris Energy Services. We're at Nuss Farms, is where the family farm sits, and we're at themodernacre.com, and Farmer Mode coming soon as well. So thanks for listening. Thank you for the support, and we will be back next week.